Ernest Siders, Charleston, South Carolina. I wanted to go to college, and in Charleston, there were two colleges there, the College of Charleston and the Citadel, which is a military school. And I wasn't allowed to attend either one of those. So I thought that I'll move to New York. My sister was there. She's 2 years older than I am, and she had moved to New York after graduating from high school. So I decided I'd go to New York. I'd find work there and go to college there. The night that I left Charleston, headed to New York, it was 2 weeks after my 18th birthday. I became 18 on the 25th of September, and around the 12th of October, I headed for New York City. I was sleeping that night around midnight when we arrived in Florence, South Carolina. And I did not intend to get off the bus at the depot there, but many of the other people got off the bus and they went into the depot. So a woman touched me from behind and she asked me, she said, "Would you go and buy my baby some milk?" And then she gave me the baby's bottle and she said, "If they don't have any milk, would you just put some water in the bottle and bring it back?" So I was sleepy, and I got off the bus, and I went into the white-only section of the depot there. And there was a fellow standing in the door. He didn't try to stop me. He just got out of my way, and I walked straight through the door. Now, having been born in Charleston, I know that everything is separated, colored and white, and I've never had a problem because I always followed the rules down there, and this is what we were taught. So I walked into the waiting section, and nothing happened. But when I walked to pull the door open to go into the cafe, that's when I saw the woman back there waving at me. She was waving, and being half asleep, I just couldn't figure out what was going on. And then it dawned on me what was going on. I was in the wrong section. And so I said something under my breath. I don't know what I said. But then there was a policeman standing there, and he came over, and he said, "What did you say to that woman?" I said, "I didn't say anything to her." He said, "Well, I think you said something." I said, and I walked away from him, and I walked over to the water fountain, and there was a white only. And I started putting water in the bottle for the baby. That just goes to show how sleepy I was. And then so he came over behind me and he grabbed me by my belt. Now I was 18 years old, about 170 pounds, and about 6'2". So I was fairly light to pick up. But then the other cop came over and they had me, both of them, and they just kind of dragged me out of the building. And so it seemed like they took me maybe 100 feet away from the building. And it seemed like the lieutenant came up. It seemed like he jumped out of the bushes there. Obviously didn't. He drove up in a car, but it just seemed like, hey, he just jumped out of the bushes. And he got out, the three of them, the two cops and the lieutenant, they were there standing and they were talking. And they told me to get in the back of the car. So I went into the back of the car and I sat down. And so while I'm sitting there, and I have to remember what I was taught all of these years, here I am trying to leave Charleston, and on the night I'm trying to leave, these people are trying to keep me here, okay? So I'm sitting there, and I said, "Now, you were taught to be courteous. If a policeman speaks to you, you speak back to him, and just, be yourself." And that's what my father always taught me. Don't say too much, answer the questions, and you'll be okay. So here I am sitting in this car, waiting for the three police cops there to finish their conversation. And all of a sudden, I see the three of them turn around. Just like something snatched them and they turned around, all three of them. And what had happened, it was the bus driver, the woman who had the baby, who had asked me to go, and everybody else had gotten off the bus. And they had walked up within 10 feet of these policemen. And so now they have to focus on this crowd standing in front of them. So the lieutenant, he turns around, he sticks his head in the window, and he asks me, "Where are you going?" I said, "I'm going to New York." He said, "Well, where are you from?" I said, "I'm from Charleston." He said, "Well, you should know better." I said, I do know better. I said, "But I was sleepy, and that's why I didn't see the signs." He said, "Yeah, but you went and you used a water fountain." I said, "Well, that's just a part of my being sleepy." And so he said, "Well, you're lucky tonight because," he said, "you know what we do with people like you." He said, "We'll take you down to that prison there and we'll never see you again," just like that, you know. And we were taught, if they say things like that to you, just don't respond, don't say anything. Because in talking back to them is where you get yourself into trouble. If you don't say anything, there's a tendency not to do anything to you. So he told me, "Get out of the car and get back on that bus and don't get off until you get to New York." Obviously, those words don't mean anything because once I get on the bus, I'm gone. I do whatever I want to do. But what you do, you keep your composure. I got off the bus. I got out of the car, and I backed away because we were always told, you got to watch your back. They'll kick you or something like that. But three of them were standing there, and they didn't do anything. And then I got back on the bus with the others, and we went on to New York. So that was the night that I said I had some angels looking out over me, because that's the night I was trying to leave the South, and that's the night it looked like I was not going to make it. And so that's the story I'll never forget. Well, I grew up in the South, so that was all I knew at the time. I went through elementary and high school. I graduated from high school. I showed you my book. It was Jim Crow in the South. It was all colored kids there. You know, in my class, there were 96 of us, 96 kids. Many of them had aspirations for going to college. I had aspirations for going. And I really didn't want to miss too many years. So once I graduated from high school, and there was nothing in Charleston for me to do. I wasn't going to go to the Citadel, and I wasn't going to go to the College of Charleston, but I was accepted to the South Carolina State College in Orangeburg, South Carolina. I don't know how many they had accepted, but there were 400 considered in my class, 400 kids in my class. I graduated in the top 10%, 26 out of 400. So they gave me a space to go to the South Carolina State College. But I decided not to go there. I decided to go to New York and stay with my sister. I thought I could find work up there, and that would make it easier for me. And so I just thought, knowing a lot about New York and what was there, that's the kind of thing that made me want to leave Charleston to go up there to go to school. And so when I went up there, of course, and I applied to college up there, and I graduated. I showed you my book, graduated in 1969 at the Pace University there. And then I went on to New York University, and I was studying taxes there. And during the time we were studying taxes there, my friend of mine and I started a business. We quit the tax program, and I stayed in New York. I went over to New York to study urban planning. So I left the tax program at Pace, where I went to undergraduate school, and I did an urban planning program at New York University. Did that halfway, and then I left. And when I came to Boston in 1973, I went over to the Sawyer School and I studied business. I have an MBA from over there. The last time I was down there, I went down to a funeral to my youngest brother's wife died about 4 years ago. And I went back down there. He's the only one left down there, and he has 2 boys and some grandkids. The rest of my family's in New York. We went to New York after I went there in 58. My sister went there in 56, and my younger brothers followed me, after they graduated from high school. We bought a house in Brockton, which we still have today, that the family lived in. And so I would say I don't have any reason to keep going down there, but I will go to see my brother occasionally. But he's the kind of guy that if he didn't come, it wouldn't make any difference, you know what I mean? He's my younger brother. And he was up here in, let's see, about 6 years ago when my daughter had her wedding. So he came up to the wedding with his wife and the kids. But since that time, his wife died, about 3 or 4 years ago. I would think it made a difference. Yeah, it made a difference because I saw more opportunities. The year that I graduated from college, there were a lot of jobs available for me in 1969. I was offered positions, a number of jobs in New York. I was offered a job in Ann Arbor, Michigan with Ford Motor Company, one in New York with Avon Corporation, and the one in Boston with the Bank of Boston, which doesn't exist today. It was called the First National Bank of Boston. And inasmuch as I had never been to Massachusetts, I decided I would take the one in Massachusetts. So I came up to work for the First National Bank of Boston. I worked there for 5 years. And while I was working there, I was going to grad school. They were paying the freight for me, so that was good. And I worked for them for 5 years, and then I went to work in Roxbury with Unity Bank, which is a minority-owned bank. So I was there. Myself and 2 other gentlemen, we were running the bank there. And when I left there, I went to work for State Street Bank, and I stayed with State Street for 20 years. And I retired 2001 from a State Street Bank. Yeah. Well, yeah, because I showed you my yearbook, and all of the kids in my yearbook from high school were black. But when I came to New York and I went to Pace, I could say maybe 5% of the people were black there. And the difference was that I made a lot of friends. That's the first time I ever sat in a classroom with white kids when I came to Pace. And I had a lot of good friends there, and we studied together. We had study groups together, and it just worked out really great. And so, yes, there was quite a difference. But also, I think the difference is when you're younger and you're under your parents, they're kind of telling you how to operate and what to do and what not to do. And if you can take that information, like my father always told me, think for yourself, stay out of gangs, be independent, and be respectful of others. If you can take that basic information and let that kind of be the guiding force for your life and go ahead and use that like I did over the years. And when I came to the North, I came to New York and then to Massachusetts, those things served me well. And so things have worked well for me. I'm a blessed person. I have a wife, 3 kids, 2 grandkids. We live nearby Boston. We live out in Holliston. We've been there for about 40 years. And things have just been wonderful up here for me.